Hi BookTube, it's Peg back at the History Shelf. I'm here today to do a book review for all of you guys, especially those of you, excuse me, who love military history or war memoir, um, anything like that. This is a fantastic book. I just finished it today. This is Just Another Day in Vietnam by a retired Lieutenant Colonel Keith Nightingale. Pardon me. Um, this is put out by Casemate Publishers, and it's about 245 pages. This is a very interesting memoir. Mostly I read a lot of general large-scale histories. I've read a few memoirs over the years, war memoirs, but this one is really distinct in that it's written in third person. So that the author can take an omniscient view of both sides of this battle. And what this recounts is a small unit action that took place in June of 1967 alongside the Dong Nai River, just northeast of Saigon, um, along a tributary of the Dong Nai, which was the Sui Long Creek. And basically, what happened was the North Vietnamese forces sent a spy to be captured by the American and South Vietnamese units just south of that river, who led them into a trap, basically, an ambush that was set up for them, which is detailed in the book with maps. These are very helpful to tell you what happened here. Um, this is this is the trap they were set into. And this gives you an overall view of the battleground. But essentially, there was it's about the 52nd Ranger Division, which was a South Vietnamese force. They were trained by Americans. I mean, they had Lieutenant Colonel Nightingale was actually one of the advisors on the ground with them. So throughout the book, he is referred to as the lieutenant. Um, and so you get some of his firsthand battle experiences. Some are very graphic, and but then he can take an overall view from all of his interviews with different people on both sides. At one point, I mean, he was able to structure a story that alternates between the American forces, the 52nd Ranger Division that went in first and were ambushed, and you get to meet a large cast of characters from both sides. So you're hearing it from both the North Vietnamese perspective as they were setting up the ambush, and also the South Vietnamese forces and the American advisors on the ground, and the air support, which was hugely influential in the final outcome of this ambush. So it was basically 300 Rangers that were facing about 1,100 Viet Cong, who also had access to about 1,000 more reserves. Um, and what stood out in this third person memoir was just how intimate the detail was. I think anyone who I would imagine that this book would become very popular and might be adopted by military academies, any type of leadership training that goes with many of the classes that are taught, because this book, especially anyone who's been in Vietnam, obviously I have no experience of battle, and our Vietnam vets are they're getting fewer and fewer in number. Um, but the detail here is very intimate. Just he describes in detail just about every aspect of a military uh, assignment, excursion, what it takes to deploy, what happens, down to the detail of what the troops feel when they have to hop onto the helicopter that's, getting ready, genning up, and just what they feel like, the vibrations as their legs are hanging off the edge of the struts there, and feeling the vibrations that go up through you know, uh, the back of their spine up to the top of their head. He talks about just the heat, the jungle, the insects, the sounds. It's very elegant. Uh, Colonel Nightingale really he has a very lyrical way of describing something as horrific as battle. And believe me, there are some horrific details in here which are eye-opening, especially when the Air Force, the air support groups come in to assist the surrounded Rangers, and they have to basically uh, set off a chain of like bombs, 500-pound bombs, in succession along the battle line. It in a way it reminded me a little bit of that scene from Platoon when the enemy has overrun the wire and the commanding officer has to say, "You got to bomb this grid because we're overrun." And then the aftermath of what that looks like. I kind of got that feeling from this, although they bombed the Viet Cong in this case, and the Rangers were able to uh, to escape, but they were surrounded at one point. So it was pretty harrowing, and I just kept turning pages. This was a very lyrical, intimate feel of what it's like to be in close combat, and it takes a wonderful view from above as the pilots are circling, and it's very detailed in how they grid out those bomb runs. So a lot of it's technical, but I would assume that a lot of military, pilots and people who are in this conflict could really appreciate it. I think this is a first-rate memoir, and I wanted to read a couple of passages that just reveal what I'm talking about. So as far as just how well written and as I said, lyrical it can be. There's a chapter on just how the rain after the initial combat of the two groups takes place, how the rain just provides this sedative effect on the whole surrounding. Um, The jungle took on a uniform stillness and sound as if to cleanse itself of the violations it had experienced. The sound of rain blotted out all other sensations. Both sides ceased activity for several moments once the rain began to course down. Each man lay in his position, drinking in the sounds of life and relaxing from the sounds of death. The rain, like a giant fetal heartbeat, consumed everyone into its sphere and brought a uniform calm to the scene. So I mean that's just beautiful. I mean it took me right there. I was just imagining laying amongst the vegetation of the jungle and just hearing the rain pouring down. It's very visceral. And then another passage where it's like in slow motion. This is the lieutenant's experience of what he experienced once they had survived an initial onslaught from the Viet Cong, and he was taking shelter along with his sergeant behind the huge exposed roots of a tree. And he sees, amidst all the death and the smells and the destruction, he sees a beetle crawling towards him. And as it goes like this: the bug finally made its way to the edge of the lieutenant's shirt at the belt line, tested the cloth surface, and made an initial move across the material. The lieutenant had watched the entire movement carefully and was transfixed by its progress. By the time the insect reached his shirt, the lieutenant had reached deep within himself for mental comfort. For an instant, he reached for an empty magazine that he normally would have used to swat the life out of the intruder. Instead, he took comfort in observing another living thing also trying to survive the night. So I thought that was beautiful. And again, a lot of the scenes are very harrowing, and especially towards the end as they are trying to extract the 52nd Ranger Division from the utter annihilation. And that's when the close air support comes in. And there is a scene here. There's a couple that were just really gruesome. Well, several, but that's war, I guess, and that is exactly what happens. And this is after the bombing run, when the Rangers are picking their way through and trying to get back to their unit and to the support unit. Everywhere the team looked were bodies. Ranger dead, VC dead, intermixed forces, parts and pieces scattered throughout the exposed earth and dangling blasted vegetation, equipment and material, harder and heavier than flesh, settled itself inside the craters, while the more delicate remains were heaved in windrows at the crater edges or buried between overlapping dirt mounds, known only by the sight of a protruding appendage or identifiable body part. Toward the northern flank and the rear of the camp, bodies lay in neat rows where they succumbed to overpressure and parade ground cohesiveness. Towards the center of the perimeter and tracing the course of the bomb line, bodies were scattered as the forces of ordnance dictated. Those that could be discerned as humans were uniformly disfigured and rent by the whole panoply of explosive force that was brought to bear. The quartet remained immobilized by the sight for some passage of time, and then, as if on a common signal, wordlessly turned their back and returned toward their companions. So this was just another day in Vietnam. This is Lieutenant Colonel Keith Nightingale's take on a very, well, it wasn't such a small unit of action for these guys. It was devastating, and it only was at the beginning. It took place in 1967. So this is a very powerful memoir told in third person, and I wasn't sure at first that it would speak to me, but the beauty of the writing, the lyricism, the imagery that is now stored now in my mind, I can't get rid of it. It's all here, and it makes it a very powerful read. So if any of you guys are interested in war memoirs or military history, especially Vietnam War, I highly recommend this book. And I will link below in the description box to the publisher's webpage for this book if you want to learn more about it. But anyway, guys, this is just another day in Vietnam, and I'll talk to you soon. I'll be back soon with another book review. Take care, guys. Bye.